What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Injection of Inspiration, where every single Saturday I, Graham Giason Matthews, inject you with a daily dose of motivational advice, helpful tips, and all that other great positive stuff. A quote I've shared here in the show a few times that I like a lot is that you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And when I first brought that quote up about a year or so ago here on the show, when I first started doing Injection of Inspiration, I had said that it had come from John Cena. Now, of course, he's not the source of the quote. John Cena did not come up with that quote, I'm pretty sure anyway. It came from someone else, like an Aristotle or something like that, some sort of philosopher. But John Cena was the one that brought it to my attention. And, I'm not the biggest John Cena fan as a person. I'm sure the guy's a class act from what I've heard. And he can be motivational. He can be inspirational with who he is beyond the ring, outside of the ring. But I like that quote a lot. And another quote of his that I liked a lot when he first came up with it or first started using it on WWE television about 6 years or so ago at this point, was rise above hate. Now, it sounds very generic, it sounds very bland, it sounds too simple, but I love it a lot. He started wearing that on his t-shirts. Probably the one John Cena shirt I would ever buy was that one. The one that he said that he had that said rise above hate, and like the Fight Steen fight colors, like the red, white, and blue. It was a black t-shirt, and then it said rise above hate in red, white, and blue. Maybe not in that order, but those are the colors that he used for the shirt. That was the color scheme of the shirt. And I like that a lot because that was also around the time he was doing the whole embrace the hate storyline with Kane, and that people were telling him to turn heel, which has happened multiple times over the past 10 years, but more notably around that time than any other. And it's so fucking true. And I've used that before, and I've talked about it before in various videos, and I don't want to talk about bullying and stuff like that, which I'm sure I've alluded to on several occasions. But there's a lot of hate out there, most notably being the Las Vegas shooting that occurred a little less than a month ago. Now, I probably should have talked about this right after it happened, but I had already pre-recorded so many episodes of Injection of Inspiration that it took this long for me to talk about it and talk about it for this, today's topic. And stuff like that, I hate to say, happens so much nowadays. And I don't want to say that we're desensitized to it because I heard about that. One of, I think, the largest massacre shooting in recent, and I think in U.S. history, in the history of this country, which is absolutely awful. So you never really get used to hearing stuff like that because that happens at schools, airports, clubs, and now stuff like this at concerts, which is so fucking terrible. So I'm not saying that we should be numb to this sort of thing or be desensitized to this sort of thing. Some people are, and if that's who you are, that's fine. But I do want to tie it into today's topic that you have to rise above the hate. You cannot live in fear, which I'm sure has been said over and over again, but now more than any other time. You can't go out in the world, not go out in the world just because you're afraid of what might happen. Stuff's going to happen regardless, whether it be good or bad. Some things you can't change, If it's your own actions that cause, some sort of accident to happen, that's on you. But some things like this, like a shooting, is obviously the worst, to the worst possible extent. But disasters and stuff like that will happen. So you can't not go out in the world in fear of stuff happening like that. If it happens, it happens. I'm not saying that you should live with no fear, but you can't live in fear. That's exactly what these type of people want. They want you to live in fear. They do not want you to go out and have fun, go to concerts. They don't want you to travel. They don't want you to go see other people in other countries because they want you to be afraid of what's going to happen. I'm not saying don't be aware of what's going on in the world. You should absolutely be aware, but you should not be afraid. You have to rise above the hate. You have to fight the hate with positivity. That's the absolute best way that I can describe it or even put it. That whatever energy it is, whether it be positive, negative, you have to feed off that energy and make it what you will. Positive, negative, whatever. Use all that negative energy to motivate yourself towards your ultimate goal. And I've said that before multiple times, but in cases like this, when it comes to shootings and natural disasters and massacres and stuff like this, just awful, awful incidents that you can never predict. I mean, this type of shit just happened out of nowhere. And again, it goes back to gun control and all that politics BS, which I don't want to talk about or even get into because, one, it just stirs a lot of debate along with religion, which is completely unnecessary because it's like a never-ending debate between the two sides, whether it be Republican and Democratic or other, that type of thing, which I'm not all that into and I don't want to talk about because it just brings out the worst in people. Same thing with religion and stuff like that. That can be argued about for days. What can't be argued is that hate is bad. I mean, that's as easy as saying, that's as simple as saying the sky is blue. I mean, that goes pretty much without saying. But how do we fight this hate without, banning guns and all that other shit? That's another topic I don't want to talk about, like I said. And even if I was knowledgeable about it, I would not talk about it. But the best way to fight this sort of thing, is to fight hate with positivity and happiness. And obviously, it's been said before, it's terrible that these type of incidents have to happen in order to bring this country together. And whether you're listening to this in the United States or the UK or whatever, it really does not matter. But history has shown, especially with 9/11 16 years ago at this point, that those type of incidents tend to bring the world together as one. But it shouldn't take those type of things to happen in order for us to come together as a unit, for us to unite, We should always be one. We are one. We are one. We are the whole Nexus theme song, but that's for another day. That's completely irrelevant. We should be one regardless. We should come together in times like this, but not only in times of tragedy, but at all times, which I know is easier said than done. But you have to rise above that hate. You cannot live in fear. And if you do, you're not living your life to the fullest, not knowing what might happen out in that world. Sure, something bad might happen, and the chances aren't that likely anyway. You never know. But there's also a good chance something good might happen too. What if, you didn't go to that concert because you're afraid of what might happen? Okay, well, the Las Vegas shooting was a couple of weeks ago, okay? Last Thursday night, not this past Thursday, but the week before that, I went to a Fozzy concert, Chris Jericho's band. Should I not have gone because I was afraid of what might happen? You never know what might happen. I'm not saying you can predict it or prevent it, stuff like that. I mean, obviously there's security checks nowadays to prevent that type of stuff. But should I have not gone in fear of what might happen? Absolutely not. I mean, I'm going to go and enjoy myself. If something happens that I can't predict or prevent, if I have a good idea that something might happen, like there was a bomb threat or something, I might not go. But obviously that was not the case. You got to live your life to the fullest. And I had such a fucking time, much more than I would just sitting home doing nothing, not capitalizing on that opportunity to enjoy myself with friends and whatnot in a setting like that. So I've said it before, but my thoughts and prayers are with those affected by the Las Vegas shooting a few weeks ago, or really any tragedy, whether it be, a shooting or anything along those lines, any act of hate, which is ridiculous that our world is still dealing with that even today. I'm not saying racism's completely gone. It's still out there, especially in certain parts of the United States. But a lot of that stuff has decreased dramatically in the last number of decades. Yet there is still hate out there. There's a lot of people, regardless of what their motivations are, that just like to feed off hate and make lives miserable for other people before taking their own lives. Like, what does that even solve? I mean, I'm not going to try to dissect their mindset or their motivations or what drives them to do what they do. To me, that's irrelevant. That's up to the scientists and people like that to determine. That's not for me to determine. For me, and for people like us, the common people, the common citizens of the United States and the world and other countries and whatever, regardless of where you are on this earth, one thing we should always do is to rise above hate. Whether it be in situations like this, whether it be with your school bully or whatever, you have to not care what other people think or do and focus on yourself. You can't let outside circumstances affect the way that you live. You have to live life to the fullest. And if you're always afraid of what might happen, you're never going to fully capitalize on the awesomeness that is life while you're still here on this earth. So never live in fear, always rise above the hate. That's my 2 cents to you on today's injection of inspiration. As always, guys, thank you for checking out the show. I appreciate it. I'll be back next Saturday with another all-new episode of Injection of Inspiration. Until then, I'm Graham Giason Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.